Welcome, everybody, to a special edition of the Dynasty After Party. And I say special because I found out about 2 minutes ago that I'm hosting the show. So I'm Joshua Hudson with Club Fantasy here. Joel Wirth in the background. We'll pop up the video. But this week, we are talking the rookie tight end class, headlined by Mr. Brock Bowers himself. And then we'll be going through a little bit of an NFL mock draft for you to kind of whet your appetite, since we got about 5 days until this whole thing's a reality. So sit tight. What up? What's up, Joel? Welcome. Sunday morning. This is your
good morning.
Spot, not mine.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. A little late, but better late than never, right?
Right. There you go. As I mentioned, in the intro, I'm Josh Hudson, founder here at Club Fantasy. That is Joel Wirth, our Dynasty guru over there. And we are going to be looking at this rookie tight end class that, honestly, kind of pretty meh, not going to lie. I stole the good tight end prospect for Wednesday, so I had to give you guys the sloppy seconds with Jaheim Sanders for this one. So sorry about that.
Well, we got to talk a little bit about Brock Bowers because Faith's here. So,
yeah, that is true. All right. Yeah, I guess we can oblige on the Brock Bowers front. But yes, we'll be talking the rookie tight ends. And then, as I mentioned, we'll be doing a 2-man NFL mock draft, which should be really interesting because I have not prepared for this. So let's have some fun. So let's kick into it really quick. Joel, let's start with the party here. It's rookie tight ends and it's Brock Bowers. So yeah. How landing spot dependent do you think he's going to be? Let's start there.
Not very. I don't think a team that, we've heard kind of all the talk about how tight ends early in the top 10 of the draft are not real good value propositions because, you're getting more bang for your buck on your salary cap by taking someone or a position that has more, intrinsic value later on, like a wide receiver, quarterback, offensive line, something like that. So I don't know that a team that would have like an elite tight end option is going to go for him. So I think he's wherever he ends up going is probably a probably very good landing spot. I just don't think it makes sense for him to go somewhere where, he'd be a second fiddle kind of guy. So yeah, I'm not really concerned about that at all.
Does the Jets at 10 and all that buzz worry you a little bit? Because Aaron Rodgers, I think, has had like one really good tight end season in his life.
See, that's why I don't think he's going there, because the former Packers quarterback just does not like throwing to tight ends. So I don't, and he is the de facto GM there. So I don't think he's going to be the pick. I don't think that's going to be the guy that he wants to go with. And I do believe he holds a lot of sway.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I think Brock Bowers to the Jets makes absolutely zero sense, in my opinion. I mean, I could understand from a standpoint that you do need a secondary weapon, next to Garrett Wilson in the passing game. And in theory, you probably don't want to throw the football to Bruce Hall 90 times. But let's face it, Alan Lazard ain't it. Dude was never worth it. Never worth whatever the hell they paid him. Thank God Aaron Rodgers is there. Otherwise, he wouldn't have gotten paid. So, but I mean, unless you're using him like an actual slot receiver, Brock Bowers, I mean, I don't think that it truly makes a lot of sense. And Nathaniel Hackett, I don't trust to actually scheme open a tight end. Just my personal opinion. So
yeah, I don't know that he needs a lot of scheming, but yeah, I agree with you there that he wouldn't be that good at it. So yeah, just Rodgers historically just has not liked, even when he's had good tight ends, has not liked throwing to them. He wants to go deep as much as he can. So the intermediate thing has just kind of gone away with him. So yeah, I just don't. I think they're going to need a tackle. There's where they're picking. They're going to have options there. So I just don't think it makes sense for them.
So let's get into the evaluation side of things. Things that, I mean, we know how good Brock Bowers is. I mean, I don't think that's much of a secret. For a traditional tight end, he is on the shorter side, because I believe he's only 6'3". He's about, 240, 245, 248, something along those lines. So maybe a little smaller than some of your more traditional elite tight ends. So what does he bring to the table that's going to make a team say, all right, this is the next unicorn, this is the next Kyle Pitts, and it's up to me to bring out the best in a really good player?
See, I think the size is an advantage for him fantasy-wise because he's not the Kittle kind of Gronkowski frame that's going to lead him to be an elite blocker. He's an adequate blocker. He's fine. There's nothing wrong with his blocking. He's probably good for this class, honestly. But so I don't think that's going to be his primary role. So I think he's basically, like, as a receiver, I think he's basically George Kittle, but he's going to get more opportunity just because he's not going to be asked to block as much. Again, that's going to be somewhat landing spot dependent too, right? I mean, how much are they going to want to throw? How much are they going to want to run? And how much are they going to ask him to block? But I don't think it's going to be that much. I think his primary role in the NFL is going to be as a receiver.
Okay. So does the team trade up for him? Does he go in the top 10? What is the most ideal landing spot for Brock Bowers?
I mean, the ideal landing spot is Cincinnati, but I don't think he gets that far.
See, why do people keep saying that? Cincinnati doesn't fucking throw to the tight ends either.
It's because they've never had one.
Even when they've tried to bring them in, they haven't done anything.
Yeah, but the guys they brought in, you're talking like Irv Smith and CJ Uzomah, they just haven't – they've never had anyone who's an adequate receiver.
But they've had opportunities to go get them, and they haven't.
I think the ideal landing spot is the Colts.
Okay.
I think Cincinnati's close behind, but I don't think he's getting that far. I think the ideal landing spot would be like the Colts, maybe the Chargers, but I don't think they're going that way either.
See, that's where I want him to go. LA.
All right.
Get him in the Chargers. That makes the most sense to me. Greg Roman knows exactly how to use an elite tight end.
Yep. No, I agree. I think they want to go with, like the Jets, I think they want to go with a tackle, but that would be a good spot.
No, and I think they do go with the tackle. Okay. Here's the scenario that I'm putting out there, right? They're sitting at 5. They're trading back, plain and simple. Some team is going to miss out on one of those top 3 quarterbacks, and they're going to pay a ransom, whether it's the Raiders, whether it's the Chargers, whomever. They trade back 11, 12, 13, somewhere in that range, and then they jump the Jets and trade with the Bears at 9. So they're armed with a later first-round pick, ideally with the Vikings. Trade up and get Bowers at 9, and then take that right tackle at the back end of the draft of the first round. Because that, to me, I think makes a lot of sense because this tackle class is so deep and this right tackle class is so deep that they can still get those 2 premium positions for them on their offense that can then help the Roman system move the way that it needs to move.
And to your point, the Bears is kind of an ideal trade-up spot because they only have 4
draft
picks in the draft.
picks.
So, I think that 9 pick is very much in play.
All right. I like it. All right. Moving on to Ja'Tavion Sanders. Pretty much the consensus tight end 2 in this draft, at least among fantasy pundits. I have seen other names float to that tight end 2 spot. But I really think I kind of compare this like tight end 2 to like tight end 14 range. They're all pretty interchangeable, the same way that wide receiver 4 to wide receiver 25 are all the same in this class. It's a dealer's choice. What's your cup of tea for the week, right?
Yeah, I mean, the gap between Bowers and Sanders is, or whoever your number 2 is probably much greater than, like you said, the gap from 2 to 10. Throw the rest of the guys in a blender and pick out the one you like. But they all have major flaws and, major reasons that they're not going to be fantasy contributors. So, outside of Bowers in a rookie draft, unless you're like a serious tight end premium, I'm not really interested in basically any of these guys.
Yeah. And I've seen some mocks where Sanders will float into the second round. And truthfully, it kind of baffles me, in all honesty. I don't think he's a bad player by any means. I think I think at his ceiling, you're probably looking at like a Zach Ertz, Jason Witten type of tight end. He's not going to be anything electric. He's not a 4-5 speed guy. From what I've seen, I think he's an okay blocker. I don't think he's anything spectacular. But I mean, outside of that, like, where do you see Sanders kind of fitting in? Where does his game shine when getting into the NFL?
So the interesting thing is, like you said, is the blocking. Is that he's so polarizing in that there's people who think he's an abjectly horrible blocker, and there's people who think he's all right. He's pretty good. I think he's okay. He's willing. He has some really bad habits, right? He kind of grabs and hooks, and he's going to get called for holding a lot if he keeps doing that. So he needs real work with his hand placement. But I think he's a capable blocker. The thing that's really concerning is when he went to the combine, he just didn't run well. He ran like a 4.69 or something like that. And like NFL tight ends who are fantasy producers you basically have to be an elite athlete. And he's not big. Like he's only like 6'2.5". So, that's my concern. It's like the production was there. He was a good player in college, but the workout just did not impress. And that's almost disqualifying with tight ends. Like there's so few fantasy producers who were not, good testers, good athletes at the combine or in the pre-draft process that it's a real red flag.
Yeah, I feel you. All right, so to continue this evaluation, we're going to bring the actual host of this show. Hey, Sicoli. Nice to see you,
buddy. There he is.
You're muted. There we go.
Yeah, you know what? I think it's just because it's the tight ends. I was trying to up the show. These tight ends, they're just sensational. But thank you so much to Josh for holding down the fort. The true king of hosting right here. I apologize.
I highly doubt that. But I'll let you two go to it and see you sayonara, guys.
See, Joel, can you tell that my shirt is also inside out and that these buttons are not going to go as they should be? But
it wasn't immediately obvious, but now that you
pointed it out. See, I want to point it out because at this point I deserve to be embarrassed. But where were we, Joel? Who are we talking about right now?
We were just finishing up Ja'Tavion Sanders.
You know what? I had a thought about who that was, and I imagine is he your tight end too in terms of for fantasy upside? Because it's I don't want to reiterate the points that you might have already made, but it's such a question mark about who's people tight end two is in this class.
Yeah, like I say, it's entirely based on his college production at Texas, and not because of the workout, because the workout was really disappointing. So if you think the production translates and if he goes to a good spot, like where he can kind of get some run right away, then yes. But yeah, there's massive downside here.
Mm-hmm. Yep. 100% agree with that. Now, next name you want to bring up here, as I pull up the show doc, I won't lie, I'm a little bit behind, but in terms of your tight end 3 in this class, do you have any clear-cut tight end 3, or is it once again kind of all the same tier of 2 to 5 kind of feel the same to you?
Yeah, there's differences in their profiles, but in their kind of likelihood of being fantasy producers, they're just, they all, like I said, they all have serious flaws and serious concerns about what they're going to do. Like kind of the next guy on the list is Ben Sinnott out of Kansas State, who like I've seen people put into their like number 2 tight end spot. He's an H-back. He is going to be an H-back in the league. He's not fast. He's not, he has some receiving production at Kansas State, but that's because of the offense they ran. They were a very heavy run offense, kind of the outlier in the Big 12, and that, they weren't one of the, kind of spread, throw it all over the field offenses. They were very run heavy, almost like Baltimore. Run heavy, use the tight end a lot, and he was just kind of in the right place at the right time. So if you're looking for the next Kyle Juszczyk, that's great. But as a fantasy, I don't see any fantasy production coming from him at all.
Hey, Kyle Juszczyk has had his fantasy relevant week, and on
yeah, but he's a guy who's perpetually on waivers.
No, I know. Yeah,
you can always find
it. It was sarcasm. Nobody's rostered.
No, yeah, exactly. He should not be rostered.
Yeah, Josh is on the same mindset, calling Kyle Juszczyk light, and also good to see Mr. Scampers. Good to see Gator, as always.
What's up, Gator? Good morning.
Love to see these guys always, every single week. You know what, Joel? Let me ask you a better question, because we do have, a mock draft that we want to get to for day one. Are there any of these tight ends that can be fantasy relevant, of these later guys, these Theo Johnsons, the Erick All? Is it pronounced Erick All? Yeah, okay. Erick All aside, I want to, if we could actually jump to Erick All as opposed to going to the next one on our list, which would be Theo Johnson. Erick All is someone that I saw a lot of people bring in for visits, because I've been going in over the last week, checking in on who teams are requesting for those top 30 visits, which they aren't top 30 picks, but they get extra access to answer questions for medicals, testing, whatever they might have. And Erick All was somebody that I saw pop up on quite a few lists for NFL teams. So a lot of people are looking at him. He's most likely still a day 3 type of guy, but do you have any fantasy consideration for someone like Erick All?
Yeah, I mean, first he comes from Iowa, which is tight end U, so he's got that going for him. He's a good player, athletic player, but he tore his ACL. He's like Jonathan Brooks. He tore his ACL kind of late in the season, so I don't think you can count. It's a long-term play. You can't really count on any real production this year, especially given the history of tight ends in the league and their development time. So yeah, I mean, he's a stash play who's got some upside, but I wouldn't, if you're looking for something for this year, nope, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, and he was number 3 on PFF's big board of tight ends this year. But I think all these guys, they carry that same overarching theme, right? Of if they're going to work out, it's going to take multiple years. We're not going to have a Sam Laporta season from any of these guys, with the exception of maybe Brock Bowers. And even then, that was a record-setting season. But, we're all these guys are going to be taxi squad plays for multiple years. And even then, we have question marks about whether they can work out. Now,
you're not going to see a Laporta, Musgrave, Kincaid, Kraft. You're not going to have 4 guys be fantasy relevant out of this class.
Yeah, and that was always the outlier. I think that's also important to remember, was last year, that tight end group was such an outlier of production. For years and years and years, we're always touting that rookie tight ends don't produce. And it's time to kind of get back to that thinking, at least with an underwhelming class like we have this year. So, yeah, with the exception of Brock Bowers, which I'm sure we've said a million times on this show, even if I wasn't here for the beginning, it is just... It's wait and see for a lot of these guys, and that includes good old Theo Johnson. Now, a lot of people just view him as a blocker, and that's a fair thing to say, because that is certainly his strength. He is a big boy. He's at 6. Oh, I believe he's 6'7" last I saw. No, he's not 6'7". I'm confusing him with someone else.
6'4" I think.
6'4". But regardless, that's... do you think he's somebody that can get on the field and start running routes in a fantasy producing matter? Because that's really the question we have to ask with these guys.
Yeah, so Johnson was he came out of Canada, so he wasn't recruited at all. Basically had to go to a tryout camp at Penn State to get on the roster. His usage there was predictably terrible. If you know Penn State and James Franklin, he could have done more than what he was asked to do. He shows some flashes on tape. The intriguing thing is he kind of blew up the combine, literally put up a 10 relative athletic score, which is as good as you can do. Again, the problem being now your comps become like Alberto and Jelani Woods, and what kind of production have you gotten from those guys?
Jelani Woods is who came to mind when you mentioned that.
Yeah, so if you like that type, if you want to take a flyer on the athletic super freaks and see what translates, Kyle Pitts was a super freak and he's a good player, but still hasn't translated fantasy production because he was landing spot dependent. So there's so many obstacles to guys like these becoming fantasy contributors that, again, it's not someone I want to spend a rookie draft pick on, especially in a class like this where there's just so many other options where, your running backs are going to fall into round 2 and 3, and you're going to have kind of deep receiver prospects falling into round 3. Man, it just seems like a real stretch to kind of waste a pick on waste is probably a strong word, but to spend a pick on these tight ends who have very little chance of producing early, And you probably get these guys off of waivers.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say waste because I think you bring up a great point of when we think about redraft, right? Think about week 1. We never, or right before week 1 in our drafts, the late round picks that we have, we never take the guys that maybe they'll work out down the line because we know we're going to cut them for our hot waiver pickups and we want to replace that. The same goes in Dynasty of, unless you have a really deep taxi squad and you're really diligent about, waiting on these guys and they last for multiple seasons. It's not just a 1-year thing. You're weak at tight end, maybe those exclusive situations. Otherwise, we want to cut these tight ends in August when, some running back gets hurt and the day 3 guy has a small chance at being on the field. And that's all you want from a running back at that point. And you're not going to get that from your tight end. So I think to some degree it is a waste because, tight end premium being the exception, we're waiting the long game for a position that most likely will never work out because these prospects aren't all that. And we always look at it with rose-colored glasses when it's all we have to look at. So I think it's honestly a fair thing to point out with all these guys. And Gator also adding out, we got some contrasting things here of if you have multiple late thirds or fourth, you could draft them because they'd be good in year 3, and that's 100% true. And Scamper's also saying don't draft rookie tight ends. So
I mean, to Gator's point, I mean it could be, but this is where your roster size comes into play because unless you're in like a really deep roster or you have like a really deep taxi squad, you just like you said, you're not going to be able to roster. You're not going to be able to get through a season rostering these guys because you're going to have injuries. You're going to need to pick up waivers, guys. You're just not going to have space. Like if you've got a 23, 24, 25 man roster, I can't imagine how you have space to get through a season and still be able to roster these guys.
Yeah. It's important to remember that sometimes the production and reality of what's in front of us is what it is. It is the reality. It's not the wait year 3 and then maybe we get the big jump. Now we do have a tight end question and a good one because I think a lot of people are going to be asking similarly from the Roll, which just came in on YouTube. Even though he has Kyle Pitts, he's probably going to take Brock Bowers at the 106 if he goes to the Chargers. Now, the Roll, if you want to mention whether it's tight end premium, because I certainly hope it's tight end premium if you're considering this, but let us know some more details because I'd love to know this because this is a decision that a lot of people are making of maybe Bowers is the best player on the board for your rookie draft and you have Kyle Pitts, you have Travis Kelce, you have a bunch of great tight ends. He does say it is tight end premium. So what's your thinking about that process, Joel?
So I think the thing to think of with tight end premium leagues is it allows you to take these high production or use these high production tight ends as flex splits, right? So Bowers, in a tight end premium is going to work. If you're not in a tight end premium and you only have, where you only really want to start one tight end, you don't want to have to start more than that. Then I'm going to bounce Bowers kind of down the draft a little bit. But in a tight end premium, he's certainly deserves to go. He may not last depending on how, if it's like a full point tight end premium, I doubt he lasts till 106 because I think he's a better prospect than some of the back end quarter. I think he's a much better prospect than like McCarthy and he's probably going to produce more early than Drake Maye. So I think, in a high tight end premium, he may not get to 106, but it definitely worthwhile going there. A half point tight end premium, that's a justifiable pick there, even with Kyle Pitts because you're going to be able to flex him.
Yeah, and the nice thing is that since you have Kyle Pitts, you don't have to make any aggressive move to move up. If he falls to you, happy, yippee. And if not, that means that when the 3 quarterbacks fell, it's when the 3 wide receivers fell. Gator mentioning that Georgia love of faith in coming with a riot. I always love faith in Georgia jokes. But either way, let's get to a couple more names before we jump into this mock draft here. Jared Wiley. Tell me what you think about Jared Wiley. I haven't got to Jared Wiley film. I've watched our last guy on this, but I haven't got to Jared Wiley out of TCU. Let me know.
He's one of the guys who could be. He's kind of like a Noah Fant type, where he really offers you no blocking production or ability at all. So like, I hesitate to call him. He's a Jimmy Graham type in that he's going to be a split out, slot receiver capable tight. He's going to have no blocking responsibility in the league. So sometimes these guys can just come in, the traditional kind of bias against tight ends is, they've got so much to learn, right? They've got to learn blocking assignments. They've got to learn routes. There's so much to learn. That's why it takes them so long to develop. Wiley's not going to have to learn blocking assignments. He's not good enough at it. So he may be, if he goes to a spot where he can just get in and become, the starting wide split out tight end, he may have some fantasy relevance. Again, completely landing spot dependent, and it's a tough projection, but that's a guy I could see kind of being fantasy relevant fairly early, just because that's the only thing he's going to do is catch passes.
Yeah. 47 for 520 and 8 with TCU in this past season. He does turn 24, I believe, in around October or so in the fall. So, yeah, definitely that older prospect, but ran a 4.62. He is an athletic guy. He does have a solid wingspan with 33 inches. So, it's like you said, is he ready to be a day one starter? Because if he's not a day one starter, he almost feels maxed out. Does that feel fair to say? Because if he's not going to learn how to block, he can't do that. If he's not ready day one as a 23-year-old, are we ever going to see it?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. It's that, he is what he is. So if that's not good enough to produce right away, then it's probably not going to happen. So
yeah. And
it's not someone you want to be waiting around on exactly like Noah Fant, because it just, it hasn't happened. So why do you think it's going to happen now?
It bothers me about Noah Fant. Noah Fant should have happened.
Two words: combine warrior.
Russell Wilson. That's my 2 words. Screwed him. Sent him to Timbuktu and third option. Whatever. Let's move on to Jaheim Bell out of Florida State. This is somebody that a lot of people have in a lot of different spots. We're talking about him late, but people have had him early on their tight end ranks and so forth. Obviously, FSU had a very good season, so a lot of people know about Jaheim Bell. And the 4.61 combine certainly put him on the map. So what's your thinking about Jaheim Bell? How high are you? How low are you? What are the thoughts from Joel Wirth?
He's a guy I put on the list just because, like, he had that recruit pedigree. He was kind of highly recruited, highly valued, went to South Carolina, then transferred. So he's really undersized. He's like 6'2", decent athlete, but not great. So, like, there's a chance, but no better than he's kind of like Wiley in that he's not going to be asked to be a blocking tight end. He's not going to be in line at all. His only role is going to be as a receiver. So, there's a shot if he gets to the, same thing with Wiley. If he goes to the right spot and he doesn't have any competition, goes to the right offense, right coordinator, there's a chance, but not someone I have any kind of real belief in.
Yeah. And it feels fair. I mean, the only thing I'll point out with Bell that I do like is that he was such an early breakout. We saw in year 2 for him at South Carolina was, when he caught 30 balls and when he had almost 500 receiving yards. And just the problem was that he never made that next step. He never made the step to go beyond that, where his career high is 503 this past season, and he had 497 as a sophomore. You want to see that jump. Especially with FSU, because FSU was genuinely moving the ball this past year, and in past years. So, yeah, definitely a little bit underwhelming considering the trajectory we wanted. But maybe he lands in a scheme that people want to utilize him more. But it's really, I think, going to come down to that draft capital, and that's the key thing with a lot of these guys is they might need time, and they might not get time because they're day 3 guys. That's possible. Yeah. Tight ends get a little bit more leeway that way, but it's still something to keep in mind.
And the problem with some of these guys is do they have special teams value? Because, if they don't, that's going to drop their capital down even farther. Like, that's a reason, like, someone like Ben Sinnott's going to get he's probably going to be like a third round. He's probably going to be a day 2 pick because he's if you value that role, you're going to want that in your offense. And he's probably going to be a very good special teams player. Like the Wileys and the Bells of the world, they just don't offer that. So, yeah, they're going to fall. These are guys who could fall to round 5, round 6. They're just draft flyers So you just don't have that value. So they are going to fall in well into day 3.
Yeah, and fair enough at least. But you know what, Joel? We ate our greens. We're at the halfway point. We're at the 30. Yeah, we did. Like, listen, we ate our greens. Now we get to the fun part of, we broke down these tight ends. There were a few that, maybe we're talking about as fantasy research down the line. We got a superstar in Brock Bowers. And we're going to be talking about Brock Bowers because we're going to do a day 1 mock draft now and running through it. We'll be doing every other pick where Joel takes the odds and I take the evens. We go right into it, Joel. We go crazy with it. We go nuts. And
we're going to have some trades too.
Yeah. Oh. Are we?
Well, we're going to have some trade offers. Let's say that.
Okay, well, let's have some trade offers. Let's do it. Okay. I'm all about this. Where's Minnesota? Well, Minnesota is an even or odd number this year. This is
they start at 11, but
both their picks are odd. Both their picks are odd. It's 11 and 23. I always forget about the second one, but either way,
they'll be picking before that. Let's say that.
I'm getting ahead of myself there, but let's jump into this day 1 mock draft. You're on the clock. You are the Chicago Bears. You have so many choices to make here with the first pick. Who are you taking?
This is probably going to take a while, so let's make this one as quick as possible. It's Caleb Williams. There's no doubt at this point. So let's just start there, or let's go from there and move the draft along. It's Caleb Williams.
Yep, no doubt there. And the draft does begin at 2 because I go back and forth about who Washington's going to be taking. I really do. I started with Drake Maye, like a lot of people, and I've tilted to Jayden Daniels. And then this 4-person quarterback rotation that reportedly might have rubbed Jayden Daniels the wrong way of them all visiting at the same time. I'm going to go Drake Maye here. I'm tilting back into that realm and going with Drake Maye and the guy that was always on the board in that situation. I'm going to work on a complete final mock draft over the next week. Before the draft actually starts, but I'm going to go Drake Maye here. And I recognize that expression, Joel, and it was one of surprise.
I was initially on that side in that I thought all the talk about Jayden Daniels was just kind of posturing and kind of drafted disinformation that comes out at this time of the year. The more I think about it, the more I think Daniels makes more sense there, because if you think about what they've done, like they brought in Bobby Wagner, Austin Eckler, guys like that, the older veteran guys. When you do that, that signals to me that you're trying to win at least be competitive right away. You're trying to like shore up those weak links and just kind of be competitive right away. So I think that's why Daniels makes more sense, because he is much more ready to contribute. He's much more NFL ready than Maye is. Like Maye's going to take some time, right? He's going to have to be kind of worked over. His mechanics are going to have to be kind of tinkered with. Plus, Daniels has got much more college experience, about 2 years more college experience than Maye does. So I think he's much more ready to play. So that's why I think that kind of makes sense. But again, like I said, I initially thought that there was posturing. So I think Maye is a perfectly viable pick at 2. I don't think it's outrageous by any means.
Yeah, and it's like I said, I've gone back and forth on it. I agree with you that I don't think Maye is day 1 ready. They do have Marcus Mariota, which, listen, I'm not going to – he's not good. But it's somebody that can at least hold down the fort, and we've seen this mold before. And I don't read into the veterans all that much, because you put Jayden Daniels in there, they're not winning the NFC East, let alone playoff game. They're still – what was that? What did I hear that? Wait, did you say they could win or no?
No, I said no, they're not.
Okay,
no,
good.
I agree. Yeah. No, they're not.
Yeah, so I think guys like Bobby Wagner, guys like Austin Eckler, I think it's really just that culture setting, and that's the big thing that Washington is trying to achieve this year, is reset the Dan Snyder and put in this new coaching staff, new general manager, this whole new approach. So I'm still going to stick with Maye. It's definitely a close one, but like you said, we got a lot of picks to get through, and I've already spent too much time on number 2. So let's move to number 3 for you, and that will be the Patriots.
So the interesting thing here is this a Minnesota draft spot? Now, if you look at the 2 major trade value charts, you got the Rich Hill chart and the Jimmy Johnson chart, right? And this is where they really diverge, because if you look at the Jimmy Johnson chart, like there's no way Minnesota gets to number 3. They would basically have to add a number 1 next year. And I don't think that's happening. If you look at the Rich Hill chart, they could get above this pick with just 11 and 23. So like, I think that New England's going to hold out. They're going to hold the line because they need a quarterback so bad, right? This isn't going to be a spot where they're just going to be, all right, we'll just take the 2 extra picks. I think they want to hold. I think they would ask for that 3rd number 1 next year, and I don't think Minnesota wants to do that. So I'm going to stick with this pick, and I'm going to take Jayden Daniels.
See, that's the conclusion I came to as well. Of not necessarily Jayden Daniels. I actually think this pick might be J.J. McCarthy, but in terms of I do think New England makes the pick. Because it is such a significant jump of 11 to 3. You could throw a number 23, and it doesn't really make that much of a difference. It's significant. We just don't see that happen that much, especially with 2 of the great quarterbacks still on the board. So New England holds all the cards. And if we learned anything from Robert Kraft, is that he's not happy with how the Patriots have been the last few years. So it makes sense to me that he's not ready to, he's also a very old owner. He's not ready to just reset for another year and then tackle the rookie problem. So yeah, I've come around on the process of the Patriots actually making their pick. Now I'll go to Arizona, and here's why I'll take a question. I'll take a trade if you wanted to offer. I'm happy to sit here. I have my guy ready to go, and we know who I'm taking. But I would be willing to consider offers because this is not nothing new for Arizona. This is what happened last year. They moved back and then they moved up. They're willing to move up and around the draft. I think Arizona could be moving back for that one person that is desperately wanting J.J. McCarthy. So I figured I'd open the floor.
I don't think Arizona wants to trade this pick. They've got 2 firsts. I don't think that adding another one really. I think they want to make this pick and take the best player in the draft.
Yeah, and I'm not saying moving out of the first round or even moving back, 20 spots.
I don't think they want to move back to 11 and 23. I think they're going to sit there. Again, this is your pick, but I don't think this is a pick they want to trade out of.
Oh yeah, I wasn't even saying with Minnesota. I was saying maybe Denver wants to make a call, which again is still 12 and Vegas is still 13. But yeah, fair enough. I'll be happy to take Marvin Harrison Jr. This is easy for me. Like you said, it's the number 1 player on the big board, on everyone's big board, or should be. Superstar, same sentence of Caleb Williams. You don't need to spend too much time on him. Get Kyler to help.
I don't think so. I think, exactly like you said, this is a guy who can transform that offense and make it kind of elite. And they can go about building their defense with their later picks. They've got a lot of draft capital in this draft. So I think that chance to kind of take the best player in the class and put them over the top is kind of too good to pass up.
I tend to agree. I do tend to agree.
I think this is a spot where if Harrison had gone sooner and they were looking at a quarterback here, then they absolutely would trade out. But I don't think that's going to happen. So
yeah, if Harrison ended up with New England, and then that number 4 spot is with Jayden Daniels and J.J. McCarthy on the board, then it's definitely more likely that way. Let's move on. You're on the clock now. Los Angeles Chargers, and this is such an interesting team because there's so many directions they can go. Honestly, quite a lot of needs and a new coaching staff to input their philosophy. What are you going to take here?
I think this is the trade spot. This is where Minnesota goes up to get J.J. McCarthy. So I'm going to trade 11 and 23 to the Chargers because I think they want to get out of this spot. I think they want to get, drop down where they can get another tackle, specifically a right tackle, and they can pick up some extra draft capital because they have, look at how much they had to give up, right? They had to give up. So Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, they just had to cut to move on from. The guys they had to restructure like Bosa and Khalil Mack just because they had so many cap issues. I'm going to move the 5 to Minnesota where they will take J.J. McCarthy, and the Chargers will move back to 11 and 23.
Yeah, and that makes sense to me because it's startling with how many holes that this Chargers team still has. You got holes on the line. You have really big question marks at receiver and tight end. You have a very shoddy defense that has quite underperformed, especially in the secondary in past seasons. and a desperate need for depth because of the injuries they keep having instead of secondary. So yeah, it makes a ton of sense to me to move back here. And Minnesota gets their guy. So I'll be here with the Giants. And with the 4 quarterbacks off the board, that takes the Giants out of trade back territory for me. Because I think they could move back, another team with a ton of needs. But I'll be happy to sit here, and I'll take Malik Nabers out of LSU. I originally was thinking Brock Bowers. I've talked about it before, about how I think Brock Bowers is it, considering Darren Waller looks washed and has talked about retirement nonstop. And I don't even think he's confirmed that he's coming back yet. So I don't know, but could be Brock Bowers. I'm going to go Malik Nabers just because I love Malik Nabers like my own son. He is unbelievably good and should be the wide receiver 1 if Marvin Harrison Jr. wasn't a god descended from the heavens.
I agree.
And Gator also mentioning as well, is 11 and 23 enough to move up? Probably not. But then you see maybe a high day 2 pick in 2025.
Yeah, there would probably it would be more complicated than that, but there would be, they would probably have to add in a 4th and get back a 6th or something like that. But they're not. The point is they don't have to give up their 25 first to make that deal. So, and the Vikings do not have a 2 or a 3 this year, so they don't have that. So they don't have that like additional kind of kicker piece you can throw in. So you got to kind of do some extra things to make the math work. But I don't think they need to give up a 25 first to make that deal happen.
Yeah, I don't think so. And Josh also saying it's the first time he's heard Bowers potentially for the Giants. Yeah, I've been on this train for a few weeks now. I posted on my first mock draft when I did that because I listen. He's one of the if Malik Nabers isn't here, and even if he is, it's Bowers versus Nabers on the big board. I mean, they're right next to each other for me. They're both sensational talents. So is Dable going to take wide receiver? Is he going to take a running back or a tight end? I mean, it's difficult, and I don't really know which way they're leaning. I went Nabers because I think they are in much more of a immediate help me right now. And as much as Bowers could 100% be that, he still is certainly more of an eye on the future with Darren Waller's situation if he does come back. But
yeah, I think they would want to know. They would want to know which way Waller's going before they would make that decision.
Yeah, especially I mean, I don't even know if it. Honestly, I don't think it has that much of a bearing, given his age and his struggles last year, and maybe they move to a more 12 personnel type of vibe, which isn't necessarily Dable's thing. But either way, if it'll be interesting to watch. But you're on the clock now with Tennessee. One of those teams that I think has been almost penned in with the pick they're going to make. I'm curious if you're going to stick with it.
No, I mean, yes, no, I'm not going to diverge. I'm going to stick with. I think they're taking Joe Alt. They need to rebuild that offensive line. It was like Green Bay just signed Andre Dillard, who was their starting left tackle for them last year, which is legitimately one of the worst tackles in the league. They basically just had to cut him after signing him to a pretty substantial free agent contract. That line needs. They're going to build. They got Bill Callahan, right? Brian Callahan's father, who was one of the best offensive line coaches of all time. So I think they're going to want to. He gives him some tools to work with. Will Levis was one of the worst quarterbacks in the league last year, throwing under pressure. When he was pressured, his turnover-worthy throw rate was the highest in the league by far. Wasn't even close. So they need to kind of build that wall in front of him. So I think they're going to take Joe Alt.
Yep, I'm right there with you. That's who I think they're going to take, and matches up with what they want to do, what they need to do, and no need to talk about Joe Alt because he's the most commonly mocked person that isn't Caleb Williams to a certain team. Plus, they can slide Skoronski inside if they want to, which probably makes more sense. But I'll go to Atlanta now.
This is where the draft starts, right?
Yeah, this is.
I think this is where it gets interesting.
And I'm gonna say I believe it's the first time in I think over a decade that a defensive player didn't go in the first 7 picks. So I'm gonna end that slide here. I'll go Dallas Turner out of Georgia. There's a lot of ways that Atlanta could go here. They can go with a trade back if they really wanted to, but Dallas Turner is somebody that I love players, Joel, that when I'm watching for someone else, I can't help but notice them. So I'm watching. I don't even remember which offensive players I was watching to scout, and I just keep watching Dallas Turner be so disruptive. And I've seen mixed reports recently of maybe Dallas Turner isn't the first defensive lineman coming off the board. Maybe he's not the first defender coming off the board. Maybe something else happens. I think Atlanta could be a sleeper spot for a cornerback here, maybe a Quinyon Mitchell or a Terrion Arnold. But for now, I'm going to just stick with it. I'm going to take Dallas Turner. I think he's a great player. And Atlanta desperately needs somebody that can get to the passer.
I agree that it's going to be edge rusher. I think there's a chance that it's Latu.
He is a riser.
Just because I think he's more ready to go than Turner. I think he's like NFL ready. Like he is step in, be elite edge rusher from day one. And they had one of their coaches on their staff coached him in college. So I think there's a bit of a natural fit there, but I agree with you. I think edge rusher is going to be the play. So whether it's Turner, Latu versus, I think they're all in play. But yeah, and we don't know, right? They may not be sure on Latu's neck. I think that he's played 2 years since the evaluation, since he took the retirement. So I think that's going to kind of ease the nerves of most front offices, but you never know. So I think the position is correct.
Yeah, it's one of those things that we don't know the medical side of it. So I think all I have to do is tackle the position group, because someone like Latu, he could go in the top 10. He could go on day 2 if people are concerned about the injury. And that's what the top 30 visits are for. Like the Falcons took a look at Michael Penix for some reason, but for that same reason, they had Dallas Turner on one of their top 30 visits. Which, if we're really diving into things, maybe we're reading too much into it. But either way, let's try to get out of the top 10 here. So on to number 9 for you right here. That will be the Chicago Bears, who might be upset that Dallas Turner's off the board. But who are you taking?
I want to make a trade here because I think the Bears want to get out of 9.
I think so too.
I don't think they want to go too far back, but I think they would like to add some draft capital because they only have 4 picks. Too. So what if Indianapolis were to offer 15 and 82? I
think they would accept
exactly.
That. I can do you one better.
That's almost exactly the pick value of number 9. It's off by like
You're saying
a late
Indianapolis
5th. Indy would come up. Yeah, they would offer 15 and 82. I think Indy wants Bowers, and I think they would want to come up ahead of the Jets and the Chargers.
Yeah, I'll do that deal. That's the question mark though, because I would do that deal if I was the Colts. My question mark is whether someone else in a better draft position of that Chargers, the Jets, do they make the move up? Because
I think this pick is definitely in play. I think we could go down a rabbit hole of who wants this pick.
Of who wants,
Like Buffalo could, if Buffalo really wants to get up and get like Odunze, they could go like their first, second, and a first next year. But that's a lot.
Yeah,
to get up that high.
That's
and they have so many needs on defense that I can't imagine them going that deep.
Yeah, let's strike that deal. I might, I might want another pick in there. I gotta say, I might want another pick, but we'll work out the semantics for now. Let's do that.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on which trade calculator you want to go to, but I think that's pretty close. A first and a third to move up 6 spots.
Yeah,
I think that makes sense.
In terms of value, I think it's fair, but when you add the context of other teams that might also be trying to move up in the bidding war, it might ensue.
Right.
I'll take another. I'll take a 4th and day. In 2025 as well. Maybe another 4th in 2024. This year. Maybe Anthony Richardson. Maybe I'll take Anthony Richardson.
So with the trade, the Colts will take Brock Bowers.
Yes, I will take Brock Bowers in a heartbeat with the Colts. Man, what a group that would be. Josh Downs, Michael Pittman, Brock Bowers. That's the supporting group you want.
Yeah, I mean, I think they would really like a deep threat to go with that, but you can find that later. You don't need to go up here. So it may be Odunze, but I think they really want Bowers. I think that's really because you're going to want to have that kind of blocking ability, that protection, somebody who can slide in and give you some protection, considering Richardson's health concerns, let's say. So we'll go Bowers there.
Yep. All right, fair enough. Now, I'm going back on the clock here. I won't lie, with all the Troy talk, I kind of forgot that I wasn't on the clock. But I'll go with the Jets here, who might be upset that Bowers is gone. I'm still looking at Odunze, which I probably should take. This is difficult because the Jets could go in multiple ways because I have Troy Fautanu so high. I think he's such a great offensive lineman out of Washington. And he's somebody that can form inside. He can kick out wide if Tyron Smith gets hurt for the billion of the time or, something goes wrong, which something seems to always go wrong. But in the interest of Aaron Rodgers running the New York Jets, I'm going to go with Odunze. Because I think Aaron Rodgers asks and he gets in this New York room, and that means a first-round wide receiver, finally. I don't love it because I've had Troy Fautanu there for quite some time, and I think that's the better pick. But better isn't always what happens.
I agree with everything you said.
Okay. Perfect. It's a good pick. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, it's a great player forming a great duo with Garrett Wilson, but is it the best?
Yeah, you have to get somebody on the other side of Wilson, and they do not have a second round pick. They gave it up to the Packers in the trade for their quarterback. So, I think since they signed Tyron Smith, they can go into the draft thinking that they're okay on their offensive line. They're not, but they can talk themselves into thinking that. So,
yeah, they did it last year with Dwayne Brown, and they added Morgan Moses as well, I believe. So, there's options.
Think of Odunze's there. He is the pick.
Yeah. So there we go. On to you. Number, we're going to 11 now, and this was the trade back spot. Trade back spot with the Chargers now on the clock after trading back from with Minnesota.
I think that Harbaugh really wants to run the ball, so I think he wants a road grader. They need a right tackle because they've got Rashawn Slater. They've got Trey Pipkins, but he's kind of is he good enough or not? So worst case scenario, they're going to take Taliese Fuaga, best run blocking tackle in the class. They could move him inside if they felt like if Pipkins shows he can be the right tackle, they can move Fuaga inside. So I think this is what they wanted to do when they traded down. So I would take Fuaga here and feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, I'm not even going to talk too much about it because that just makes too much sense if it's with everything Harbaugh wants to do, and I'd be floored if they left the first round without an offensive lineman, especially a mean one like Fuaga, who has I've seen him mocked very highly and honestly not that lowly. So this seems quite appropriate for him. Goes over to Denver now with me, with QB1 Jarrett Stidham. I am not going to be taking a Bo Nix or Michael Penix here. I don't care about the smoke with Michael Penix. I can't imagine. I don't get Michael Penix being day one. I really don't. I know teams might be able to eliminate the medical concerns with these visits, and maybe they're talking themselves into it. I don't think that's going to be Sean Payton here today. I think he believes Jarrett Stidham can do it. So, God, with that,
I disagree on that. But
no, that part is sarcasm. I just don't think that there's somebody that they want on the board right now. And so with that in mind, man, I am really not in love with what Denver needs to do because there's so many options. I think this could be a trade back spot for anybody wanting to. Man, I'll go Brian Thomas. I think someone's going to fall in love with Brian Thomas. Someone's going to fall in love with Brian Thomas. I'll say that it's Denver. I don't. You know what? Allow me to tilt. Joel. Allow me to tilt because I don't think they're going to receive it quite yet. I'm going to follow Josh's mantra because this is the other pick I was considering. Draft a corner, trade Surtain to Philly. I'm not trading Surtain, but I will draft a corner. I'll go Terrion Arnold. I'll go Terrion Arnold out of Alabama, the tilt pick here. But I doubt Denver's in talent acquisition mode, and I think Terrion Arnold is a fantastic corner in all technique purposes.
I agree. I think he's right there with Mitchell as the first corner in this class, and setting up the kind of all Bama cornerback room of Arnold and Surtain is like you're locked down for years if you do that. So yeah, Arnold can move to the slot if you need that. I like that pick a lot.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, on to you right now. Picking number 13, Las Vegas Raiders, who have been linked to Michael Penix for quite some time now. No,
I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I think they're taking Penix. Is it the most Al Davis move in the draft?
It is.
I whether you like him or not, this is a Raiders pick.
I know. It's so not gonna work. It's not gonna work. But fair enough.
How many times do Raiders picks work?
Not often.
That's my point. This is
especially when they take someone that's not consensus on the big board to be this high. they jump again for the Alex Leatherwoods of the world and the who's the cornerback?
They like traits, man. They love traits, and Penix has got traits. And if you talk about the evaluators, they think that this is a first round pick. So there's people who hate it. There's people who think he's absolutely going in the top 15. There's people who think he's going in the top 10. I don't buy that, but this is a totally Raiders pick. So I'm going to take Penix at 13.
Yeah, I think all the Minnesota and Denver talks about whether they go up for a quarterback. I think it really overshadows how much the Raiders want to upgrade their quarterback position as well. I don't think they're remotely happy with what they have, and they're desperate to get that long-term superstar within the AFC West, that needs that strong quarterback. Couple interesting points here of Josh saying that they go right tackle, then take Penix in round 2. Certainly could happen. That's what I would have done. I would have taken a tackle here. And then Gator also calling him Jameis Winston. I can see it, but they both sling it. I think that's the overarching. I
think Penix has much more kind of quarterback intangible value than Jameis did. Like Jameis had the worst body language ever of any quarterback, just zero leadership ability coming out of that guy. So I think Penix has much more of the things intangible things that you want in a quarterback than Jameis did.
Yeah. And Gator also adding where this seems like a Raider pick. I don't think they will make that just because of the memes alone that will result from it.
Way too soon.
Let's go to New Orleans.
You can make the argument that Penix is too soon, but I think that like they need a quarterback much more than they need a receiver. So they need a faster receiver. I mean, what good is having Worthy if you don't have a quarterback who can get him the ball? And right now you've got Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew. You can talk about, they could get him in the early second, and they probably could, but there's no guarantee, right? Somebody could jump up ahead of them. Denver could. I mean, any other team. We've heard talk about the Rams wanting to get a backup. They brings so much uncertainty that I think they're just going to pocket that pick and get their guy.
Yeah, and Gator's saying never too soon for the Raiders. It's never too soon for a quarterback.
Exactly.
It's never too soon for a quarterback as well. So yeah, let's move on to the next pick here. That's New Orleans, another team that I've gone back and forth on about who they're going to take. I think this could be the Brian Thomas spot. I think it could be Adonai Mitchell. And yet I'm going to look at the defensive side of the ball. And I'm going to go with the same pick I had mocked here a week or two ago. And I think it'd be a great fit. I think he's a very good player, and I think it's what they need. I'm going to go Cooper DeJean out of Iowa. Mr. Versatile. They have a hole at safety with Marcus Maye out the door. They have Jordan Howard in there, who was like a 7th rounder last year. They have a desperate need at slot corner because Alontae Taylor was the worst slot cornerback in the league last year. So they can move him around and play him where they need to. And I think that versatility is really underrated. So that's where I think they go. But a lot of ways that the Saints could go because there's a lot of draft needs that they have.
The interesting thing would be he's basically a bigger Honey Badger, and he could learn from Honey Badger. And
exactly.
Matthew's coming to the end of his career, so yeah, I think that makes some sense.
Yeah, that also weighs into my thinking as well. It's a very seamless transition into his role, into what Tyrann Mathieu used to do. But on to you right now, Joel. Pick a number 15. That's the Chicago Bears after trading back from number 9 with the Colts. So who are they taking?
So I think if they were sticking at 9, they would go defense, just because they've got a defensive head coach. They have needs on that side of the ball. You saw what an impact adding Montez Sweat had on their defense. I mean, turned them from kind of hot garbage into competitive. So I think that's the way they would go. They would get kind of a bookend edge rusher to go with Sweat. But I think here, I don't know how they can pass up on Fashanu and get the left tackle of the future, because you can pair him with Darnell Wright. Now you've got bookend tackles to protect Caleb Williams. I don't know how they say no to that. So I think the Bears would run this pick to the podium.
I understand that. The only other person I will bring up is who we talked about already, in Latu. Latu, who has also met with the Bears in the last week. Do you think that he could be the pick here? Because that is obviously like the big mock pick to the Bears is finding that edge rusher opposite Montez Sweat. Dallas Turner off the board, but Latu's still here.
Yeah, I agree. He could be. He certainly could be. Like I said, I expect him to want a defensive player, high-end defensive player at some point. But I think, and this kind of depends on them agreeing with me on their evaluation of Fashanu, but I think he could be like an elite. He's so young. He's super athletic, super talented, has some mechanical flaws or some fundamental flaws, but those things that can be easily worked out. I think he is a foundational left tackle, and you put him across from Darnell Wright. I just think that's too much to pass up at pick 15.
Yeah, no, a lot of things we also remember and we have to see are teams that when they fail a quarterback, like they failed Justin Fields, they do the opposite of what they failed them to try to fix it. They did not set Fields up for success because that offensive line was horrific for the first, almost his entire Bears career, if not his entire Bears career. So it does make perfect sense that they're going to try to rectify this time around. Take Fashanu, who I agree is one of the best left tackles one of the best left tackles in this class. So I'm on the clock here with Seattle. We are halfway through day 1. Tough to go with here because Seattle, another team that I think they can go a lot.
Let's throw a trade offer out there.
Okay, I'll listen. I will listen.
Let's put a trade offer on the board. Washington, who we've heard wants to get back into the first round.
Okay.
And we know that Seattle, this is John Schneider's first draft without Pete Carroll.
Yep.
We know Schneider loves trading out of the first, or at least trading back.
Yes, he does.
Washington gives up 36 and 67 for 16.
I think it would take more than that. I mean, in terms of our purposes, I think it would take more than that.
It's close on the trade. They would have to throw in a little bit on the Rich Hill. That's 230 to 305. So they would probably have to throw in. Yeah, maybe that is kind of light.
Give me a third.
Next Johnson trade.
Fourth, maybe.
540. That's.
Because I agree with you.
Yeah,
I think it makes a lot of sense for Seattle to move back. There's no clear need for them. And if they can get a couple dart throws, like you said, in that traditional John Schneider thought process of trading back and getting more draft capital.
Oh, there. Okay, that's sorry.
They can wait on. So go on.
36-67. Washington has an extra third, so it would be 36-67 and 78. So it'd be the high second and 2/3, two first half thirds.
I will shake your hand on this dream, good sir, and let's get that deal done. We'll send it to the front office. There we go. Yeah.
So Seattle is out of the first round. Washington is at 16.
And all is right in the world as we're back to John Schneider things. So, Washington on the clock here. So now all of a sudden, I feel compelled to let you make the pick considering you made the trade up. I think that's only fair.
I think they want to tackle. I think they want to get ahead of Dallas and Philly because they could both be in the tackle market.
I think Fautanu is the pick here, if that's where you're leaning.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, good. All right, we're on the same mindset.
Because he's a guy who can play anywhere on the line, basically, and they need help everywhere on the line.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's the exact process. And he's also that, he fits, I think, what Dan Quinn wants in a player as well. He is such a mauler in some sense. And, and I think that flexibility to slide inside, kind of like what we saw with Skoronski last year, and why Skoronski went, inside that top 12 was because if it doesn't work out at left tackle, it certainly could, or at tackle, and it's still good for Skoronski. He is just as good on inside, and you will still get a long-term starting piece in doing so. So, yep, I'm right there with you with trading up for Fautanu. It makes a lot of sense to move up here. Jacksonville could have taken one as well.
Yep.
So there's a lot of teams that could use Fautanu, who I think could, like I said, I had him going number 11 for the longest time. So this is a very good value for him. But you are on the clock now with Jacksonville, and do I want to make an offer?
I've got an offer.
Buffalo
gives 28. They're first and second, basically 28 and 60 for Jacksonville's pick.
I don't think Buffalo wants to do that.
You don't think so?
I think Buffalo has multiple needs. I'm gonna assume you're saying they're moving up for a receiver.
It's almost an exact match on yes. It's almost an exact match on the Jimmy Johnson trade chart.
Fair offer. It's a fair offer. I just don't know if Buffalo wants to do that because I think Buffalo has needs on its defensive line. I think it's got holes in secondaries.
I agree.
Yeah. I think this receiver class is good enough that they're willing to wait.
What's your offer?
My offer or my thought process was something around. I was originally thinking the Eagles moving up to try to get Quinyon Mitchell. That's what I was originally doing and trying to leapfrog. Maybe the Steelers.
That's where I would have gone with Jacksonville's pick if it was still here. So
that would be my pick if I was Jacksonville as well. So maybe with that in mind, maybe it doesn't make sense to do it. Considering we're both thinking about the same person. Screw it. Let's just do that. Let's take Quinyon Mitchell. I think that's it. I think any time where two people agree that we would take this, but maybe we'll move back. It tends to feel like that's just the right pick. And they have so many holes in their secondary to fix. So getting one of these big three cornerbacks, with all three of them off the board, and Terrion, Arnold, Quinyon Mitchell, and Cooper DeJean, if you consider him that, I think it's good value for Jacksonville and it's what they need.
I 100% agree. So yeah, if they don't make a trade, I think that's the pick they would make there.
All right. So that leads, although I just realized that was your pick as well. So Cincinnati.
No, that's what I would have done. So it's all good.
Okay, perfect. Well, Cincinnati on the clock here. And I think Cincinnati would listen to an offer. I don't think it'll be with Buffalo. I don't think they're going to do it with Buffalo. But I think they would consider an offer from somebody wanting to move up for, you know what? Let's get crazy with it. Maybe T. Higgins is on the move. Maybe they take Brian Thomas, form the LSU duo, and T. Higgins is on the move. We sent T. Higgins. All right, now hear me out.
Ooh, spicy.
We sent T. Higgins. I'm forcing this. I'm so forcing this. Let's send it to Arizona. Send him to Arizona for 27 straight up. Okay.
Oh, so you're trading Higgins to Arizona for 27.
For 27, and then taking Brian Thomas here.
They got cap space.
It's a page out of the book that we've seen before. All right. Let's get crazy with it. I know T. Higgins has already come out and said that he expects to be back, and for this in terms of he hasn't seen anything materialize, but the draft materializes quite a lot of trade stuff, and it would not be the first time in ever that a team is out of the loop on it. And they're all saying that's a steal for Higgins. I think it's fair. And as for Josh, I think
that's as much as they could expect for Higgins.
That's what I'm
first for a guy you're gonna have to pay $25 million to. It has to go to a team that has cap space, and Arizona fits that. So
exactly, and that's why I think there's a good deal. It's because we have exact opposite results here of one saying a steal and one saying Arizona would never do that. With Josh saying that and the rule saying that, because it does come with that contract. And yeah, Higgins could be a 2. Higgins probably is a 2. Good thing they got Marvin Harrison. And all of a sudden, Kyler Murray has one of the best rooms in the. Yeah, like I think this would be, if this happened, I think Arizona would be over the moon with it. And while yeah, they do have to pay him, we've seen them go down this rabbit hole before with Marquise Brown, so they're willing to do it. I wouldn't say Marquise Brown was it didn't work out, but I think it was a good process. I think everyone was happy with or they weren't happy with what they got, but they were okay with how it went wrong. And I think with T. Higgins, it's doing it the right time around with, you have an established person that's here for the long haul, Marvin Harrison Jr., as opposed to a out-of-town DeAndre Hopkins. So I think this would be perfect for Arizona. I think it makes a ton of sense for Cincinnati to kind of save that cap space and move back, stay in the first round and doing so and get an extra first-round pick in doing so. So with that in mind,
I would have said like Carolina, but yeah, I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah. And that's
I think that really makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense. And I love Thomas in Cincinnati opposite Chase.
They will just
where you can
field to
get that legit field stretcher that Higgins is not. I mean, Higgins is a good player, but he's not a legit field stretcher like Thomas is. You've got the LSU connection. So yeah, I love that. I love that for them. If they can make that Higgins trade happen.
And yes, he is, Gator. Trust me, I have a source. But man. Okay, let's move on to our next pick here. You're on the clock with the Los Angeles Rams. What are you thinking?
It feels too chalky to take Byron Murphy and let him be the Aaron Donald replacement, but I think I'm going to do it anyway. I think the NFL really likes him. I think he's. I question if he's actually going to make it this far.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What about Latu? Because I think they are. I think Murphy makes a ton of sense. They could go with that, but Kobe Turner was sensational last year. They don't have another good defensive tackle next to him, and they would love to have one. But Kobe Turner is a very good defensive tackle, so I think they have more of a need bookending it with Byron Young and maybe a Latu's here, or maybe a Jared Verse is here, who I know you like, and you might be holding out for the Packers. But
if this was draft day, I would be sitting here with my fingers crossed. Yeah.
So you think they go interior versus exterior?
I do, because I think the question becomes how much of Turner's play was built off of playing next to Aaron Donald.
Sure.
So, and I think Latu would be the fallback if they don't take Murphy. But I think the NFL really likes Murphy. I think he's I think on most teams' boards, he's a top 12, 13 player. So yeah. I think the Rams would be kind of happy to pull that in here.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And I think he's also a standout among the group as well. Of kind of underwhelming one of Jer'Zhan Newton. He's great out of Illinois, but is he more than a run stuffer? We don't really know. T'Vondre Sweat, good name, picked up a DUI a month ago, like an idiot. So,
and I think the weight on can he maintain his weight is going to be a really big concern with NFL teams.
Yeah, so you got all those question marks. So I think it's fair to take Byron Murphy, who comes from that good program, and I like him quite a lot. So I have no issues with that pick. The only issue I have with that pick is that it forces me with the number 20 with the Steelers.
All right, here we go. What are you doing?
I don't like that Murphy goes there, because I wasn't anticipating Latu being here, and while they shouldn't take Latu, I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if they did. That said, I'm going to
think so, huh?
Their strength, when a good defensive lineman's on the board, they tend to just take the good defensive lineman, but I'm going to do what they should do and what I hope they do, and that's Jackson Powers-Johnson. Take the center. They don't have one on the roster, let alone starting, and a good center. The Steelers know better than anyone how helpful it is to have an elite center. After having Pouncey and have struggled to replace him in recent years by paying Mason Cole too much money to be terrible for 2 years. So I'll take Jackson Powers-Johnson. Not going to overthink it. He is my number one interior defensive lineman. Very good player. Not defensive lineman.
I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
No need to overthink it. Now, Miami, for you,
exactly.
At number 21.
I think this is a trade-out spot.
Yeah.
I think Dallas wants to come up and get this pick ahead of Philly. So I'm just trying to look at on the chart where we can make this work. It's about a fourth to come up and make this move. But Dallas doesn't have a fourth, but I think we can make it work. So I'll put it up to you. Dallas moves up. Dallas tries to move up to 21 from 24.
I think they could do that. I think they could 100% do that.
I think Dallas wants to get ahead of Philly, and I think they want to take Amarius Mims.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think it'll be Mims or J.C. Latham, but I'm right there with you that it's one of those two. I'd probably be saying it's Latham, but it's dealer's choice. It's the same concept.
I think Mims is a Jerry Johnson traits kind of guy because he's so he doesn't have the experience, but I think you can look at that guy and say, this is the next Tyron Smith because the kid's incredible. Just doesn't have the body of work, but holy crap, that kid he's a good looking prospect. So I think he is a Jerry Jones guy. And sure. I think they really want to get their offensive line is really kind of falling apart. They lost Biotish. They've lost Tyron Smith. They need some reinforcements. So I think they're going to want to get ahead of Philly because I think Philly's in play for a tackle as well, or at least an offensive lineman with Kelsey gone. So they're going to have to shuffle the line. So I think they're going to want to get ahead of Philly. So I think that's a trade-off. And Miami would take any kind of extraneous draft capital to get out of 21.
I am 100% agreeing with everything you just said. And now that leads me to the power position. Because I know Josh Hudson's in the chat. Now, he did me a tremendous favor of hosting this wonderful show with you for the first 15 minutes. So I can't make, the Jonathan Brooks pick that I think that, the Eagles could need and create that true platoon of Saquon Barkley and him. And frankly, I'm not familiar enough with the long snappers that I could take as well. So, a lot of options. Here. Let me remind myself of something real quick because I have an exact thought process here. Yeah. Graham Mertz is something. Not Mertz. Graham Mertz.
Graham Mertz.
No, not Graham Mertz. Who am I?
As a Wisconsin fan, you just made my skin crawl. But
Graham Barton. What's the last name?
Yes, you are correct.
That's Graham Barton is who I was thinking initially, but Josh does bring up a good point about J.C. Latham being here. There's a few, maybe there's a cornerback they want to reach for because there's Cooper DeJean didn't fall here. Coley McKinstry is here. A lot of options Philly could go here, and I wouldn't be surprised if they move back as well. But with that in mind, I'll throw Josh a bone. We'll go J.C. Latham. I think it makes a lot of sense of what they usually do, and they do desperately need to restock that offensive line. And this is a good time for the Eagles to take an offensive lineman. Once again, they always feel like they're in the right time to take one and then work him in, get him right, and then he's the starter, like they're doing with Cam Jurgens at center right now. And
Lane Johnson's not going to last forever.
What's that? Yeah, exactly. That's the key thought here is that J.C. Latham is the succession plan to Lane Johnson because I can't I don't know if Lane Johnson has another year in him after this. Not that he's fallen off in the slightest, but he's an injury away from retirement, and he's starting to slim down a little bit. So, and Josh also adding that they could take Latu if he fell here. I really think we're missing something with Latu in terms of I think he's going to go much before.
I agree. Yeah,
taking here. I think it would be quite an Eagles pick to take him as well. But it with Bryce Huff and with Josh Sweat on the other side, it's something I think they're comfortable with what they've
got. The kid from Georgia they drafted who never played last year, right?
Yeah, Nolan Smith has to eventually be on the field. I can't remember
his name, but Nolan Smith.
They got to use Nolan. Yes. Yeah. But yeah, for now, I'll take J.C. Latham as a very Eagles pick. You're on the clock right now with the Chargers after trading back with Minnesota, their second first-round pick. Josh also adding Latu in the same boat Jalen Phillips is in, which is entirely 100% accurate, and that's the exact comp, I think. But Chargers on the clock here. Who are you taking?
Since they got their tackle early, I think they're in BPA mode, and I think that's probably Latu.
the life after Khalil Mack type of pick, or even with Joey Bosa. But you do
yeah, but I mean, you could book both those guys kind of play on the left side, so you don't really have anything. You got Thule on the inside. I think just that pure edge rusher coming off the right side of the defense is something they really lack. And like I said, they're going to have to move on from Mack and or Bosa at some point. They restructured their deals this year, but neither one of those are kind of long-term options with their contracts. So, and again, I think this is BPA. They got their tackle. They got what Harbaugh wanted. Now they can just take the best player, and I think Latu is the best player on the board. I would hesitate to say by far because I think Verse is a similar player, similar level, but one of those two guys is the best player on the board. So let's take Latu.
I won't argue with that because I do agree that he's the best player on the board, and as like a matter of policy, I never will contest someone taking the best player on the board at this point of the first round. I do think that there's somewhere else they might go with it. I wonder if they would prefer to take, I don't know, maybe someone to help that interior of the offensive line. Maybe they want to further bolster it. Or if they want to go with one of the receivers out wide of Adonai Mitchell or someone like that. But it's hard to know with this regime. And I do agree with you that Latu is the best player on the board, so it makes sense just to take him here. And the rollouting Chargers do need a receiver, which I agree. I think it's 100% in play here. But it is a deep receiver class. And I think it's very possible that they take a guy on day 2 and they punt it. The big question mark down the line if Josh Palmer and Quinn Johnson truly don't work out, which they probably won't. Josh saying Barton would make sense, and that's what I'm tempted, but I think Latu makes sense as well for Joel's pick. Well, Miami on the clock now at 24 after trading back.
All right, trade offer.
Hit me, because I don't want to make the chalk Xavier Worthy pick. I want to, but I just don't.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
I'll give you the opportunity to make that pick because I think the Packers there's one player the Packers would really want at this spot, and I think they would give up a 5th to move up one spot.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I know you're not going to take who the Dolphins are going to be wanting. So
they're not taking Worthy. That's 1,000% sure. He's not their kind of guy.
And I do think they're going to go Worthy. I think it's just such a perfect succession plan to Tyreek, and I do think they need to think about that. And they haven't got nearly enough out of their wide receiver 3 spot for the past 5 years. So we'll
trade picks in Green Bay and Miami. Trade picks.
Yeah. We'll do that and send over a ham sandwich as well.
Okay.
Okay.
With cheese?
Swiss.
Okay. So premium cheese.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, Swiss is premium. Okay. Yeah. I want some holes. Something Tua can use as target practice. But yeah. We'll make that swap here. Green Bay moves up one spot. Well, you can already write in Xavier Worthy for 25 there. I think it just.
Okay.
It's too much fun. It's too much fun
for
my.
I agree. I agree 100%.
I think a lot
the Packers are going to take. Yeah, the Packers are going to take Jared Verse because, edge is a completely underrated need for them because they did the 4-man rotation last year.
Huge.
And now you've lost Inigbare, who's a nice player, but he's a rotational player. He's not a great player. They're going to a 4-3 where you really need pass rush. And right now you've got 3 guys who can play the position, assuming they don't trust Brenton Cox, who was an undrafted player last year and I think he was active for 3 games. So basically you're one injury away from having 0 depth at edge rusher, the most important position on the defense. I think they actively need an edge rusher. Jared Verse would have been a top 10 pick last year. He's better than Tyree Wilson. He's got much better production than Wilson did. He's way better than Lucas Van Ness, who the Packers took at 14 last year. So I think he's another guy that it's kind of crazy that he's fallen this far out. He didn't have as good a year in 23 as he did in 22, but that's a Packers thing. That's a Gutekunst thing. He likes taking guys who have whose production kind of fell off in their final season relative to their kind of penultimate season. So he's a perfect fit for that defense. because he's shown he can play with his hand in the ground, 3-point, 4-point stance. He's done that. He's a good run defender. He will give them some pass rush from the right side opposite. Rashawn Gary, sorry.
Rashawn Gary.
I was just blanking there. So yeah, I think he's a guy that they're going to actively be going for.
Yeah, and I think the Packers are long overdue trying to find an upgrade for Preston Brown on the side. Nothing against Preston Brown, but long overdue trying to find Preston Smith. Sorry.
Yeah. And his contract, again, he's another guy that they can only push his contract out so far. They probably have to move on next year.
My only question mark is, what are you doing with Lucas Van Ness then? Yeah, I mean, you spent a first-round pick on him last year.
He's still a rotational guy. Yeah, he's still a rotational guy. I mean, they used him as a rotational guy last year, where they would basically run Gary and Smith kind of outside the 20s, or I guess inside the 20s, like in the prime situations, and they would let like Van Ness and Enigbari kind of rotate in, kind of in the middle of the field, and put Gary and Smith in the money situations. And you could see, like in the 49ers game in the playoffs, where when they didn't have Enigbari, they really ran out of gas in the second. In the Dallas game too, like their edge rushers were really gassed. They gave up a lot of. They kind of went to their scrubs basically in the Dallas game because they were so far ahead. But you could see they really ran out of gas late in those games, especially in the San Fran game. Like in that final drive, they had nothing left, and that's where that missed field goal really hurt them, because then they were not, you couldn't like take deep timeouts on defense. You had to save them for your offense, and they were obviously gassed. So I think they need depth, especially going to the 4-3. They need more bodies at that position.
Yeah, First is a great fit for that. So either way, we'll move right on to pick 26, because I've already said Miami taking Worthy at 25, although technically that's now your spot.
I agree with you. I think that would be a super fun and realistic pick for them.
Yeah, I think at some point they have to consider, especially Tyree picking up another legal situation, which he somehow once again is seeing that he is somehow going to dodge. But they need to have a succession plan in place. And I think Worthy is that unique type of talent of, he's not just a burner. I love him. I think he does so much so well. But regardless, let's move on to number 26 here, and that is Tampa Bay, another team that could go a lot of different directions. I think Latu would have been a very nice pick here, honestly, but oh well. Difficult. This is difficult for me because I really don't know where Tampa Bay wants to go with this pick. I would listen to offers, but I imagine I'm not going to get many. At 27 at this point. If anybody wants to move up for Bo Nix, anybody?
Yeah, that would be a spot if somebody wants to get into the first round and give him a first year or fifth year option.
Yeah, that would be ideal. But in this world where that doesn't happen, I will go. I'm trying to think about who's on my big board at this point. I'll go Chop Robinson. I'll go with someone that Todd Bowles thinks he can get the most out of. And work on the edge. I think they still have a need on to get to the passer from the outside. They've worked the inside very well. They've got some good help on the side. They got Yaya Diaby if they want to use him to blitz. But I think Chop Robinson, they will find a role for if they like him. And while the production was not great, the burst on film is really second to none. And if anybody's going to get something out of it, it's going to be a defensive-minded head coach.
I don't disagree with that. They need some edge help.
Yeah.
And they they've got, like, Robinson's problem is he's terrible against the run. So they've got like Vita Vea. They've got good interior run defenders. They don't necessarily need their edge guys to be, and they've got good linebackers who can kind of chase. So they don't need guys who can, guys.
And they got Devin White, so they're even better in run defense now.
Exactly. Addition by subtraction. So yeah, I think that makes sense.
All right, awesome. Well, that makes me feel good, Joel. Thanks for that. Let's go to number 27, and that's the Bengals now, thanks to them trading T. Higgins to the Cardinals. So now the Bengals are back on the clock. They've already taken Brian Thomas Jr. Who are you picking for their second first-round pick?
It feels like another BPA situation. So Graham Barton, a guy who can play kind of all over the offensive line. for a team that's kind of perpetually trying to upgrade their O-line. So I think that makes some sense there.
Yeah, the only other position I'd be looking at would be defensive tackle if they want to go with the Jer'Zhan Newton, because they desperately do need help interior with DJ Reader now. DJ Reader's on the line. I know he's not on the Bengals, but I think he's on the Lions now, right? DJ Reader?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So
I think that's fair, but I don't know that the league likes
Newton that much. I think he is a round 2 guy. Maybe.
Yeah, I think he's more of a product of the draft industrial complex than a guy that the NFL is going to like.
Yeah,
at least as a first round pick.
Yeah, I think he's most like. I don't think he's going to be getting to the passer as much as we hope, and if he was, he would be going on day 1. So
see, I think those kind of penetrating interior D linemen, like I think we as kind of evaluators like those players more than like the NFL does, because you can find those guys later. You can find those guys later, right? You can find, like the Packers did with Carl Brooks last year. They got him like the 5th round. I mean, he's probably as good a player as Johnny Newton is, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, Newton's not I don't think he's a great run defender. I think he's got some penetration ability. I don't think he's great. Like, I don't think he's anywhere near where like Worthy is. Not Worthy. Sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say let's throw Xavier Worthy on
Murphy. Sorry,
on a center. He will dust.
My bad. Oh yeah, I don't think he's anywhere near as good a run defender as Byron Murphy is, and I think like Chris Jenkins out of Michigan is a much better. Like if you wanted that, you just kind of wait for Jenkins.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do tend to agree that there's a lot of players in a similar tier, and that typically means that they either fall or they go early, and they're not going to be going early. So.
Yep.
No issues there with Grant Barton. I think it makes a lot of sense. And now Buffalo is here, who might be upset that Chop Robinson's not here, and Jared Verse not being here. So I think that help on the edge has been wanting. And I think it's very possible that, like you tried to do, Buffalo moves up for receiver, but I think they'll be happily sitting here, and they're better off for it to take Adonai Mitchell out of Texas, my guy, who I think can do everything very well, and I think will be a very great fit with Josh Allen. The only concern I might have is it's not the route stuff that we've talked about in the past. It's he has diabetes. He has the same exact situation as Mark Andrews, and that's my only concern, is how much of that might impact his draft cost and whether that might impact his ability to be on the field. Obviously, Mark Andrews has managed it, but it does take quite a lot out of you. It's a very difficult thing to do. So I'm hoping that doesn't cause Adonai Mitchell to slide or impact his ability to be a great player. But in a world where the medicals all work out, I think Adonai Mitchell will be a fantastic fit in Buffalo.
Yeah, and on the Bob McGinn kind of scouting reports that came out this week, which cannot recommend more highly, it's worth the $7 a month to go subscribe to Go Long TD just for that. They said that he wasn't real responsible about taking care of his diabetes. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? Are teams going to knock him because of that? Or are they going to say, okay, this kind of not justifies, but explains why he's been kind of so surly. And so, he had the kind of off-field maturity concerns. So is a team going to look at that and say, okay, we can get that under control, and we get his blood sugar under control. And now he's, the off-field kind of stuff kind of goes away, and we can just draft the talent, and the talent is worth drafting here.
And Buffalo, I go back and forth with Buffalo because we've seen Buffalo take a chance on surly talents before, and it worked out for a while.
Exactly.
So with that, I think they're willing to run it back again if they think that they can get that under control. On to you now. At pick number 29, the Detroit Lions, another team with a decent amount of options that they could go with here. But serious need at cornerback. Kool-Aid McKinstry's here.
Yeah. I think
and cut.
I think this would have been a Chop Robinson spot if he didn't
Yes.
go, because I think they want some pass rush on opposite on the right side.
Yeah.
So the question is it McKinstry or is it Nate Wiggins, who I do not like at all? I think he's way too skinny to work in the league, but I think he'll be a good like cover corner in his heavy zone scheme, and that's kind of what Detroit does with Aaron Glenn. So I think they might. I don't think the league likes McKinstry as much as kind of the draft industrial complex does. So I'm going to say Nate Wiggins here.
I'm trying to think if I can offer a trade here, but probably not. Because I think Denver has to consider moving up for Bo next year.
For to 30?
To 30, just to get that 5th-year option. They have a few day 3 picks. They have quite a lot of day 3 picks. If you think that would be enough, I don't have the trade value charts like you do, as I should.
Yeah, I think Baltimore would be willing enough to get out. That I think they'd be okay with it. Baltimore's a team that likes to trade back.
Yes, it is, and I think
and they legitimately have some needs on their defense after all those kind of free agent defections. So Patrick Queen, I mean, they re-signed Matabike, but Queen going, and did they re-sign Geno Stone? I don't remember.
They did not. I think Geno Stone went to Cleveland, but let me.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, they've got enough needs on their defense.
Geno Stone went to Cincinnati.
Plus, I think there's enough. Yeah,
so
I think
with
they
that
have
in
enough
mind,
needs that they would want to trade back.
Let's try to make that deal. I'll offer you 76, 136, and a 25 third. How does that add up on the value chart? That's off the top of my head.
76 is 61. It's probably not close.
Yeah, it is quite a jump. Because they don't have the second round pick, and that really makes it difficult.
Yeah, that really.
Yeah, you know what? Maybe Denver doesn't have the capital to move up here, and I don't know if they're willing to pay that much for Bo Nix, as much as I like Bo Nix. So I'll stay put. I'll be fine to stay put. And I'll take Nate Wiggins. I think they could use some help.
I took Nate Wiggins.
Oh, you took Nate Wiggins
to Detroit.
Okay, you know what? I'm not going to go Cooley and McKinstry then. I'll go Tyler Guyton. I think they could use some help on the offensive line. They want to grab a tackle. Guyton is a very natural fit with what's left on the board, and I think it's the end of a tier, honestly, with Guyton. And
it's a guy that probably shouldn't and doesn't need to play right away. So
yeah,
I think that's a good fit.
Yeah, it's a good stash pick with Baltimore, who has done that before. But on to the San Francisco 49ers. Who are you taking? I have a pick right in mind for them, but I'm curious on who you think this will be. There's a few ways you can go with it.
Yeah, it's probably too soon for Luke McCaffrey.
Now,
I think we just kind of shit on Johnny Newton, but I think this is a spot he could go because they need. They lost their. Did they trade Armstead? They're going to lose Armstead, right?
Armstead's gone. Armstead, they let Armstead walk, and then I believe it was the Jaguars that paid him considerable money.
There you go. Yeah, so I think they need help on the interior, and I think that's the kind of guy that they like. So I think Johnny Newton could go there.
Yeah, and I think even with Clelin Ferrell's also walked out the door, which say what you want about Clelin Ferrell, and
exactly.
But he played in every single game for them this year. Had a very significant role in that rotation, and if any team relies on their defensive line, it's the San Francisco 49ers. So I'd be right there.
And they lost Chase Young, right?
And they let Chase Young walk.
He went to New Orleans?
Yeah, to the Saints. Yep.
So they need almost a complete overhaul of their defensive line.
Yeah, they have a defensive line need. So I think with that in mind, Newton makes a lot of sense. I think Darius Robinson could be a fantastic fit there as well in terms of what they want to do. But I'll move on now to pick 32, the final pick, the Mr. Irrelevant of day one, the Mr. So Relevant, honestly. Whew. The options I have. Oh, so many places I can go. Man. It is not easy. This is not that easy for me, honestly. I would entertain questions, but I don't.
I think this is a trade-up spot, but I don't know who would want to get up.
That's what I'm trying to think.
I think Denver would want to get up here, but I don't think Kansas City is going to make that deal. I don't think they want to make it easy on a team in their division,
especially without getting a round 2 pick back. So that's
is there a receiver that Carolina wants bad enough to kind of flip to move up a spot, or they can move up like 9 or 6, 7 spots from 39.
What about McCarthy to the Chiefs?
That's who I was thinking of for Carolina, but
for either or. I mean, honestly, but
if they wanted, again, is it worth it for them to move up that far? Again, is it worth it for the Chiefs to trade down when it's 1 pick from 33? And like, I would think they would entertain.
I think this pick gets
39.
Traded. I think this pick gets traded, but I don't think they would move down 1 pick to potentially lose a player that they would want. I think someone will end up moving up for it. I'm just struggling to think who exactly that might be, because I don't think we have any clear-cut faller right now. Maybe
no, I don't think there is.
Yeah, maybe I think Ennis Rakeshaw could be a good pick here. Maybe they I think they might want to restock that cornerback room. They lose
Snead.
Yeah, they lost Snead, so and they obviously have a lot of great talent, but I'll go Rakeshaw. That's what I'll go with. I'll go with Ennis Rakeshaw. Okay. I know a lot of people like Cooley McKinstry. I have my question marks, and I think we're both saying them up because of the name, and it is terrific name value. I do think more receiver. I think someone's going to move up into this back final 10 for a receiver. I would really be shocked if we only had 5 names going of this group, honestly. But
it feels like a McConkey spot. But like I said, I don't. How aggressive does Carolina want to get to move up there? Because they don't have a lot of draft capital either. So yeah, I think that's a spot, but it's tough to see someone kind of moving up into that.
Yeah, and I originally had
and who has the capital to move up there.
I originally had Casey sticking here, taking a receiver, and taking Brian Thomas, who I had following here in my initial draft before I kind of accepted that teams will talk themselves into him on a much higher level. So I think they could go with a receiver. I think they could go a different direction and take take McConkey or take probably not Troy Franklin, but I'm trying to think about who I would probably have next up with Adonai Mitchell off the board. And Xavier Worthy off the board. Yeah, I'll stick with Ennis Rakeshaw, and I'll be satisfied with that.
Okay.
Well, that wraps up first round, Joel. And I do need to apologize to you for showing up late on this one. That was a colossal mistake on my end, but I'm happy that I was able to make it. And we were able to talk about this day one, talk about the amazing tight end class that we had here today. And the generation.
I like this draft. I think there's enough chaos that it kind of, things are not going to go like chalk. Like that never happens in the draft. I think we put enough chaos into it that it made things really interesting.
Oh yeah, no, dude. T. Higgins, Arizona. If I could make one deal happen, it would be that. Outside of Ayuk to the Steelers for 20, but which I should have proposed that trade probably. Would you have accepted it if I proposed it? Number 20 for.
I don't think the Niners are trading him. I don't think they want to trade him.
I don't think so either. It's just too perfect.
I don't think he's going anywhere.
But he unfollowed them on social media, Joel.
So did Debo, and he's still there. So.
Well, either way, that wraps up the Dynasty After Party. Here, we are 1 week away from the draft. The next time we have this show, we'll know. We'll know how accurate we are. And honestly, probably 100%. Probably going to be 100% accurate.
Oh, at least 97.
Yeah, at least the first pick will be right. And that's all we can really guarantee with all the chaos that's going to come up. So thank you all for tuning in to the very long and very special episode that we had here today with this tight end group and the day one mock draft that we ran through. My name is Michael Scully. You can follow me at Michael_Scully. You can follow Joel here at the Joel Wirth. And of course, Club Fantasy FFL. That's what you're watching right now. That's what we're doing this show for. It's for Club Fantasy. So follow Club Fantasy at Club Fantasy FFL on Twitter, Facebook, all the amazing social media sites that we know and love. And be sure to subscribe on YouTube. It really does help quite a bit. And, we get to have these amazing comments and these amazing back and forth with the chat. So thank you all for submitting those comments, and we'd love to have you guys as subscribers if you aren't already. So thank you all for tuning in to this amazing episode of the Dynasty After Party. Be sure to check out Gator's show tomorrow, Mocking Stars at 10 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. Always a great radio voice, I will say. I got to say. Although a great video voice, too. He's a very
Quan Jones from NFL Network going to be on tomorrow night, so big show.
Yeah, definitely need to check that one out. But thank you all for tuning in. Remember, all you wonderful people, Dynasty, it's like a disco ball, keeps on spinning year-round. So join the club every single Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern right here with Club Fancy. Enjoy the NFL Draft. Have a good, safe week.